And welcome back to Project Lead the Way Capstone. Good morning, everybody. This is day three, the morning session. Before we get started, there is in the E3 system, and this is where the actual courses that you will be using with your students. It may even be in the professional development area, but where you'll be using this with the students, you'll have the teacher guide. And inside here, you'll find some of the resources that include, I clicked up one, by the way, the EDPPSR, that scoring rubric. When they said they did the update, all they did is they just they switched the name from engineering design and development to Capstone, but I see on the actual Excel spreadsheet file they're still using the old version. I thought they were going to do an update on that this week, but nothing changed on it. It's still the same rubric on there, but I did put that inside our shared resources area. But that rubric, and it even says on there, do not distribute to students. This is property of University of Maryland. Well, that was when they were trying to do the whole thing with AP credit. But, I print it out as a poster. I have it up on my wall at school just so students can see the elements. They really don't look at it, but I look at that as I'm trying to come up with my own rubrics. So that EDPPSR, it's just a way. Hey, if you're doing competitions within your school or within even teams, that could be a way that you develop rubrics to help score these student projects. And Scott, do you do much with that EDPPSR as far as the rubric itself with your students?
No, other than the fact that those have been distilled into individual rubrics for specific assignments. And of course, it's what goes into the jury response rubric that the jury of professionals use. Now, I've tweaked that some because I do it four times instead of one. So I take out, for the when they do the project proposal, I take all the stuff out that has to do with, the final thing and preliminary design review, critical design review. So it builds up as they go along, and I adjust the weighting as it goes along. So at the beginning, did they? How is the problem statement solid? That gets a high weighting, but by the time we get to the end, that problem statement is pretty much done or slightly tweaked through the year, so that weighting goes down a lot. But other things, did they show that they had good test results or something like that? That gets higher weighting later on. So that's about all I do with it. So
Yeah, and some of you, a lot of people get into rubrics. Some of my colleagues, they really get into these things. They do some awesome stuff with these rubrics. But, we'll be sharing some resources with you as we go on with this training. Also, the capstone outline, capstone resume, these are also located under the course preparation area. But we pull these out. We actually pull these out and we put these in our shared resources folder. So this way you have them, the course outline, the capstone course resume inside there. I even did something I'm going to share with you all, and I'll put this in, but recruitment's everything. So I actually made like these one-page documents that talk about the class. I put example projects on there, and I'll share those. So I do that for each of my classes because if I don't have numbers, I don't have a job. So half of my job at the high school is just going, trying to recruit students. And I kind of made my own course resume that I'll share with you all too. I just want to make a couple changes to it. But also in the my Jeff's resources folder, I am switching over to the name Capstone this school year. But I have my course outline. This here is something that I hand out to the students as far as, it's just the way classroom management stuff goes, course objectives. It has information about electronic device policy, which all that stuff is changing this year, attendance policies. But if you just wanted this as an example, feel free to take a look at this. But this is what I send home to my parents. They sign it, the student signs it, they put their contact information on here. Uh, like I said, it's just something that I hand out to them. I know this is a couple years old, but I have updated this since, and I could put my latest one inside there, but you get the gist of it. Also, the EDD deliverable. checklist. This is something that I do with my students in Capstone. So as we sit down with the teams, when we form teams, this here is a checklist that I mark off as I sit with the team. So I keep this master checklist. So as I work with different teams, like right now during summer training, we have 8 teams here. Within your school, you may have 4 teams, you may have 2 teams, maybe you have one team if you have a small class. But it's just a way for me to kind of keep track on where all the different teams go. And I just put the date that I met with them or the date that they completed this. So it kind of keeps me in the loop with where each team is going. So again, it's an editable document. Feel free to use this. Feel free to edit this. These are little freebies that we're giving you. And then my outline of dates, my school year, September through the end of June. We're starting, I think, September 8th this year. So usually the first half month, we're getting into what is Capstone. We're talking about online portfolios, setting up the engineering journal, problem identification, choosing problems, getting in the teams. That's taking a whole half month to do with my students, getting those creative juices flowing, going out, walking around campus. And then when they have their problem, then they start researching the problem. They're getting into justification. So this is the end of the first month of school through beginning of October. And this is actually what we're talking about today is articles and surveys. That's our agenda. That's going to take my students a couple of weeks to do right there, getting the school librarian involved. I get the statistics teacher involved with my students at this time. So lots of outside people, but it's just something that I do within my class. Is it perfect? No. Every year you got snow days, you have fire alarms, early dismissals, grade level assemblies. You have these guest speakers that come in. Nothing's ever perfect, but the more you teach this class, you start to realize and understand how long some of these deliverables take for your students to do. Uh, with that said, I know yesterday we talked more about problem identification and coming up with theme problems within their area, forming teams. Does anyone have any questions on any of that before we get on with today's agenda? Or Scott, any housekeeping announcements?
No, I don't have anything right at the moment.
All right. All right. So again, remember, nothing's ever wasted in Capstone. Trust the process, focus on the problem. We're not thinking about solutions yet. All that comes time in element D, and never fall in love with plan A. Today, we're going to be doing some activities, and these activities we're doing today, we will be outlining inside our engineering journal. So this will be a perfect example that our students will go through, and these would be like little deliverable grades for our students just to get grades in the book. Because I know some of you are required to have a live grade book and you have to have so many grades in the books. And we'll talk about what you can use in Capstone just to get grades in the system. And I know other teachers are like, no, they get one grade for all of element A, they get one grade all for element B. But then if a student is slacking, then, oh, I thought Johnny was doing fine, and all of a sudden he's failing. So most teachers, they want multiple grades, multiple deliverables. So what we do today will be a couple deliverables that you can do with your students. But we will be outlining the activities we're going to be introducing to you momentarily in our engineering journal. We're going to be talking about some articles, some surveys, and after we do like the brainstorming in our journal, then we'll be using some electronic template files through Google Docs, Google Forms. We'll be charting out some data. So that's where the productivity software comes into play. And then when students start thinking about like final presentations, end of the year, trade shows, they pull exemplars out, and that becomes part of their team portfolio, their electronic online portfolio that they'll use to showcase all the wonderful things they've done within their team. So always remind students, get them in the habit of utilizing their journal. At this point, we've been in school for, over 4 weeks now. The students are in a routine that they say it takes students 2 to 3 weeks to get into a routine. So they're coming in, they're taking out their journal. Those of you that do the do nows, maybe they're doing some type of do now activity while you take attendance. But again, they need to have that journal out and they have it out the entire class period. So what do we got going on today, everyone? This morning we're going to start off and we are going to review your team problems. So we had each team share three problems that you think will be fun to go through over the next 2 weeks. Again, you may not be 100% in love with your topic or problem, but again, it's just a topic that's going to get us through the process and learn the process. So this way on your own, and for our students on their own, when they have a great idea, when they have that aha moment, they know how to go through each steps of the process to come up with the solution. So part of that, after we review the team problems, we're going to do all that together. So we're going to be putting up your slides and we're actually going to go through, probably take maybe 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, to kind of have each team just kind of read their top three problems. And we're just going to ask yourself, hey, do you think there's research out here to back it? Is this something that you think will be testable, be able to build a prototype? And this is exactly what we do with our students. Because once when you have the green light on one of your topics, that's when the research fund comes into play. That's where, and the next item is we need to justify this problem by research. We're justifying our problem by research because it's not just the students that think it's the problem. It's not just you and your team members that think it's a problem. We need to get these outside stakeholders involved and some outside references and resources to help justify that, hey, our team problem really is a problem. So there's going to be lots of research involved this afternoon between our 3 hour break. You're going to be critiquing a couple articles on these article artifact summary sheets, and that's going to be part of your team deliverable. And then when we come back in the afternoon session, we're going to start talking about surveys. We're going to be drafting some survey questions out inside our engineering journal for homework so that tomorrow the team is going to look at all these survey questions and you're going to be actually drafting and sending out a survey based off of your team's problem. And all of this is going to help us refine and define our problem statement. So that's the agenda for today. Scott, before we get started, anything you have that popped up?
No, I think we're doing good. Let's see.
So
Okay.
where all this fun stuff is, if you are in my PLTW, now we're getting into what we call component two. So component two is all about validating our problem. So we're going to first identify our problem. You came up with three problems that you may want to solve. Well, the very first element, I should say, this is the element A. What we do in element A is all about, hey, we identified our problem. Now we have to justify it. And this is where our research comes into play. And just so you all know, Dale Colson, he's one of the original writers of this EDD capstone class from Mercedes, Texas, along with Barry Whitty up in South Colony, New York. But Dale Colson, he taught me one thing about edutainment. These are little stickers, and I buy sheets and sheets of 8.5 by 11 self-adhesive paper, sticker paper. I run them through the color laser printer, but I print out these little squares, and this is something that they stick inside their journal. So right when we start element A, they know, because as teachers, we're trying to hit up all levels of learners, the audio, the visual, the hands-on. So they have this hands-on sticker and they're putting this inside their journal so that we know, hey, now we're starting element A, justification of the problem in our capstone class. So everything they do in the journal will be after this little sticker. And it also helps too when we talk about grading. Then eventually, for example, tomorrow we're going to talk about element B. So they're going to get an element B sticker. They're going to put that inside their journal. So as they start taking notes on what they have to do for element B, it's inside the journal. But again, this is just one of those like classroom management things that I started to use. And it's kind of weird how excited students get over these little stickers. And they sit there and they color them all in and they shade all of that stuff in. But I think they really they like this type of stuff. But I'm always using like little stickers and things inside there. All right, so let's go to our shared folder. let me take a step back. We're going to go to our team's top three problems. And just for an example, this is just fictitious. Scott and I, we ended up forming a team together, beach theme related. And we said, hey, taking everyday items to the beach is challenging and cumbersome. Swimming in the ocean could be dangerous during shark mating season. Failing to apply sunscreen properly can lead to skin cancer and other health conditions. Now, if we look at that last one, failing to apply sunscreen properly can lead to skin cancer and other health conditions. Like that could be a legit capstone project to work on. There's the science behind there. You can see where there'll probably a ton of research out there that has to do with skin cancer and the rays of the sun. So there's definitely lots of science principles in there. And just think about with the cancers that can tie in biomedical. But I just find that if this is a 2 week class, this could be kind of difficult to work on. So that would be like the maybe. The middle one there, swimming in the ocean can be dangerous during shark mating season. Well, yes, that is a problem. People get bit and attacked by sharks, but I'm thinking, hey, am I going to be able to find data and research on this? Probably, but is this something that I can probably build and test? Do I have access to a tank of sharks or a pool of sharks that I could, find a volunteer, whatever I don't know what my solution is going to be, but my volunteer to go swimming with the sharks? Eh, Probably not. So that one will probably be a no for my students. And if I don't live by any oceans or any shark-infested waters, that may be an issue because I'm thinking, hey, in this class, I got to talk to experts. I got to go out and conduct surveys. I'm gonna probably have a hard time trying to find oceans nearby where my school is because they're all over an hour away from where I am. So, and beaches are shut down. It's cold, it's snowy in New York. So I would definitely not work on shark mating season being dangerous. But then the top one, taking everyday items to the beach is challenging and cumbersome. All right, this is open-ended. So I know the more I kind of research this, I'm definitely going to be refining this when I start making a problem statement on that. So I think taking everyday items to the beach is challenging and cumbersome. Not perfect. It's not in well-refined problem statement format yet, but I know I can do some research on that. I know I can go out and actually find people to take surveys on. I can actually go out there and see what people are bringing into the beach and why is it challenging and cumbersome. So I would say out of our team's top three topics, that first one is probably the better one that I know, hey, it's kind of simple. It could have a simple solution, even though I don't know what the solution is, but that could be something fun I can work on for the next 2 weeks within this training. The other two items on there, they're not bad ideas. It's just it's going to be hard finding those resources, and I can just kind of see time getting in the way, especially dealing with some of the shark stuff going on, and then the whole thing with skin cancer, finding data, and then trying to test those type of elements there. Scott, anything else that you look at when you start looking at your students' problems?
Well, no, that's exactly it. What is the reality of being able to, get information on it? Of course, when you said that we did this on the beach, you did not take into account my Scottish, Irish, English, Welsh, and Swedish background, which is something that keeps me away from beaches as best as I can. But and if you need sharks, you can always go to the local bar association. Sorry, lawyer joke. My daughter's a lawyer,
Yes.
so I can mess with lawyers. Anyhow, no, that's the big thing is trying to, because they may be really smart kids, but their experience in the real world is so limited in so many ways that yeah, you really have to be asking those really pointed questions. Okay, swimming in the ocean could be dangerous. Okay, how do you know what shark mating season is? Just to start with that, much less, okay, what ocean are you going to go to? Because yeah, I'm 4 hours from the ocean here, because that's Texas. It's huge. So yeah, so same sort of stuff. Just you got to work on them keeping it real.
And just so you know too, you're going to have students from all walks of life in your class. Scott has a different type of student in his program. than what I might have or what you might have. So I'm kind of keeping that in mind as we're kind of going through some of these problems. And again, some of you are biomedical, some of you are computer science, some of you are engineering. It's still the same process we follow. It's just that your cohort of students, biomedical, computer science, engineering, they're going to kind of do as we start going through the elements, and we're going to be modeling that with you all here these 2 weeks. But as you start going through the elements, you're going to start to see where, hey, this is where the biomedical is going to come into play. Hey, this is here. We're going to focus more on the computer science aspect, or of course, engineering. You're going to see where the engineering ties in. All right. The travel team, what one of you wonderful people there, Mike, Jackie, Amanda, just one person, just want to rattle off your three top problems. Feel free to unmute.
Sure. So we were looking at travel and we hadn't narrowed it down to like car travel, plane travel with kids, without kids. So we were talking about items in your personal area while traveling becoming disorganized. Always that freak out of where's my passport? Keeping toddlers fed and entertained while traveling is very difficult. And then your valuable items, itinerary, and critical information, often not readily available, can be left or stolen, especially when traveling outside of the country.
Yeah, that's a big issue. And I'm just looking at those, like lost and stolen articles. As far as research goes, I mean, you can start looking at, different police reports. I'm sure there's data out there on theft in certain areas, or even reaching out to how many people have lost or stolen or misplaced passports. So you can find data in some of those areas there. As far as like personal areas, travel and become disorganized, that's when you have to start defining like, hey, what kind of personal area? Is it in the hotel room? Is it at the beach? Or is it just like in the suitcases? So that's where you would kind of start putting your heads together and start kind of defining that a little more as far as what type of personal areas. Is it a wallet? Is it a purse? Is it one of those like fanny pack type things? So that I would kind of tell my students, let's kind of brainstorm that just a little further, just to kind of make that just a little more well defined. Scott, anything on keeping toddlers fed and entertained while traveling is difficult?
Yeah, toddlers. Well, yeah, who, I seriously doubt you're going to find a lot of research papers on it. And so you're going to have to go to surveys. And where are you going to get people's survey? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be in person? That sort of a thing.
Yeah, and as far as, I mean, keeping toddlers fed and entertained, it could go both ways. You can just focus on feeding toddlers while traveling, and then, because I know people that feed their kids while they're in the car, and then entertainment. Like, so that can be two separate problems right there for that middle one.
Yeah, always be careful about, things where the kids are putting and in it because they may be related, but they aren't exactly the same thing. And so they're really two separate problems, and you might have to help them focus down on one in particular.
And I love your logo, by the way. That's awesome. Now, Mission Travel Possible. Is there a particular topic you're kind of more excited about out of those three?
I don't really think we had narrowed it down to one of the three, but definitely something to do with creating an item to help people get organized in one way or the other.
Hmm.
They all actually follow that theme, which is to have a device that keeps everything together. Like maybe for the toddlers, it's the food is here, the book is here, the iPad is there. Whereas for an adult, it would be we don't want to lose the AirPods, the passport, whatever. So organization is the biggest theme.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. And I think there's always a true need for organization. And as Scott was saying, when we start doing research for these topics, sometimes you have to look at the broader scope, but most of your justification will be talking about surveys and expert interviews and looking on different forums and things like that.
Yeah, another thing that you could keep in mind on this is that, okay, travel, that's a pretty broad thing. And you mentioned passport. Okay, are you flying? Is it travel by airplane? Is it travel by car? Uh, Train? Are you in an RV, where you carry your house with you? Are you going camping? Lots of different modes of travel. And so you could use that with your students to say, okay, which one are you going to focus on? Because what might be a good solution for traveling in a car might not be the same as for traveling on an airplane. So,
Yep, some things to keep in mind. But technically, any one of those is, I think, 2 week summer core training friendly. I don't see any major hiccups with them. It's just that we'll just have to get a little creative when you start doing the research, just so you get some data back on some of those items there. But thank you all for sharing.
awesome stuff.
All right. The classroom lab team. Oh, I like that. I like these graphics. They're coming up looking really good. Does someone want to volunteer to read off your 3 top ideas?
I can read it.
Thanks,
The
Ashley.
first one was giving students more control over 3D printing process and make it easier for teachers to monitor in less time. So I feel like we felt like it always falls onto the teacher to send the stuff, monitor it, set up the 3D printers. So coming up with a more efficient way for students to gain more control over their 3D printing. And then our second one was tools for students to use while cutting cardboard and other materials without injuring themselves. And then our final one was organizing small parts and screws, such as the VEX screws. And we were talking about like a possible automation, like the quarter sorter, where you would put the change in and it automatically separates by size. So something where it can automatically sense sizes or screws versus bolts and automatically separate it.
Hey, you're thinking solutions already. So just try, and we always naturally do that. We do that. I love because students they start talking about solutions. Just make sure that you just still focus on the problem part there. But Scott, do you use like a buzzer or anything at school or a bell? And once when they start talking solutions, I start ringing it. Do you do anything like that in your class?
No, no, I don't have anything mechanical, although that's an interesting thought. But I should get one of those things from Staples that says that's easy. I said, yeah, that's too easy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I just say no solutions yet. So,
Yep. But all great ideas. I think every teacher here, and even too, if you're in a science classroom, if you're in a scientific classroom, think about everything that's in your classroom, whether it's a, biology lab or if it's in a chemistry lab, organization is key. It's not necessarily always small parts, but that seems to be where most things were always lost and not found. But I think that's definitely applicable to multiple areas. Students, they always have issues cutting cardboard and foam board. They're always injuring themselves. I always find the 2 deadliest tools in any lab is the X-Acto knife and then of course hot glue because they're always hot gluing their fingers because they're not using the hot glue gun the right way. Again, I think any of these 3 problems here could
mhm.
be fun, 2 week, challenging enough. I'm not saying they're super simple, but they're not super challenging. But I think each of those 3 ideas you'd be able to take through the rest of the capstone design process.
While we're on the part of small parts and everything, I have to say that this was the best $8 I spent at Lowe's. It is a telescoping magnet. And so at 66, I'm getting too old to be bending over and picking stuff up all the time. And when they go underneath the drill press or whatever, it's a lot easier to get it. So those Lowe's, $8. I also have the big magnetic broom. It's a giant magnet on 2 wheels with a stick, and you just drive it around and it picks up everything. But we don't pull that one out as often. That's usually when the whole Vex kit tips over, then we pull that out. But
Tho-
anyway,
yeah, the magnetic sweeper, though, those are awesome. Got one of
yeah,
those from Harbor Freight. Yeah, so any of those could be
yep,
great 2 week
yeah.
problems there. Nice. I know the Roomba. Amanda says code teacher recommends a Roomba for cleaning the room. Oh. All right. Hobby hippos. Does someone want to volunteer? And
Sure, I got this one. All right. So don't you hate it when you're low on table space for setting up that new board game? That feeling that you're mid-project and everything is spread out on the table waiting to dry, but you got to clean it up in order to have dinner. Our problem we found was space and setting up and cleaning up. That was one of our things. Um, Craft chairs don't exist. Stools are uncomfortable for long periods of time, and office chairs have poor lumbar support or armrests that get in the way of manipulating the craft you're trying to do. Also, our office chairs do not expand to stool height, so bench tops are too tall for comfortable grafting. And then wouldn't it be great if there was a visual time management board that operated from an app that you could digitally update so you could plan when ink glaze paint is drying so you know if you have enough time to do other things.
just for that last one, I kind of leads to a solution already.
Mhm.
So if we just focus on the problem, it would start off just by saying, hey, not knowing if the ink glaze paint drying time is set for the next process. So if you just kind of pull out that thing about developing an app because we don't know if that's going to be the solution yet. So that's something I would kind of work with my students is like, hey, let's just rewrite it so it looks more like a problem. So why would you need visual time management board operated from an app? Well, because we don't know how long it takes for glaze to dry when doing painting or ceramics. All right, well, that part, that's going to be your beginning problem statement. I,
Sounds good.
Scott, I think
Yeah.
any of those, you guys have some really good ideas so far. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they're all simple. They're all would be 2 week friendly. There's definitely places to send
Mhm.
surveys out. You'll get some research on that to understand the
Mhm.
problem, to define it. Is there one you're in love with more than the others?
Um, I think we were looking more at the setting up and cleaning up one, because we find that to be our biggest like challenge in actually being able to engage in the hobby sometimes.
Okay. Now, board games, you're talking about like Dungeons and Dragons, Monopoly, kids games, or is it like all of the above?
I mean, like we could take it from as simple as shoots and ladders to yeah. I mean, like you could always go up to, I don't know if you're familiar with like Gloomhaven or Twilight Imperium, but those things take like 15-20 minutes to set up and then half an hour to put back together when you're done.
Wow. Yeah, I think Scott, any of those are good. So you
Yeah.
have some deciding to do when we get back to our teams here. Which one of those the team wants to pursue? Oh, this is great here. Safety sprout. Do you all want to read these off for us?
Yeah, I can read it. Okay. So we kind of focused on kids' safety issues for ours. The first one was due to kids' small airways and underdeveloped chewing abilities, and natural tendency to explore objects with their mouths. Young children are especially vulnerable to choking on food, small toys, and household items. And then our second one was more with like temperature extremes. So kids do have a harder time regulating their body temperatures. Exposure to either extreme heat or extreme cold temperatures can be very harmful to them. And then our last one was as kids learn to explore the world around them, parents have to live with the fear of either kidnapping or their child literally just wandering off and getting lost.
Hmm. Hmm. Great topics, and I know topic one, topic two, those are great STEM topics involving biomedical, engineering. It may even lead to a part of a computer science project inside there. So if I was having a team of biomedical, computer science, engineering working together, I would say number one and number two would be good. Number three, that could be very important topic. But if I was to have students working on that, I would have to maybe have them focus on one particular area. Maybe it's like at an amusement park, or maybe it's outside, riding bikes. So I would try to I would try to kind of keep it to like a specific location, because I just think exploring the world, that could be numbers of variables and lots of different opportunities. So it'll be hard just to kind of find one area as far as the research goes. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I'd probably look at one or two also. For one, in case you don't know, I think it's the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They have a standard plastic ring that represents the diameter of a toddler's throat. And if you're going to create a toy that you want to be for smaller children, when they says for ages blah 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 blah, if it fits through that the hole in that little ring, you can't um, advertise it for kids below a certain age. So you may want to look at what the consumer product, I think it's CPSC that does that. So
Yeah. Is there any topic there that you guys are feeling more than the others?
I think originally we were kind of leaning towards two or three, simply because one, there's a lot of products already on the market for like choking prevention and stuff like that. And then also, like you were saying, Scott, there's so much research and so much like kind of already liability issues at play with choking things, especially for toys. So I think two or three is kind of what we're leaning towards.
okay. Now, your research will probably help focus you a little bit on that. But good stuff.
Yeah, good job there. All right, moving along. We're doing good with timing, everybody. Food and cooking. Now I'm hungry. Shara, Ricky, and Braden, one of you want to share our three problems?
I'm going to go ahead and speak for us. So yeah, we did food and cooking, uh, and these are our top three that we came up with. Our design name is Top Shelf, and so we're focused on creating kitchen products using, innovative design, but also focused on function and the attractiveness of the end product as well. So the first one that we came up with was it is a struggle when cooking to determine if a pot or a pan is cool to the touch. That's something that we talked about, some possible solutions already. I know we don't want to talk about that right now, but I think that that's something that's doable, maybe even within this 2-week period of time. Number two, when using all cabinet space in the kitchen. So when using all cabinet space in the kitchen, items tend to get stored in the top and the back of the shelves, getting lost forever. Well, what we were thinking is that I think that this was written a little bit differently than what I had written before. Let me just sort of look at what I had before. So basically, the top cabinets are hard to reach, and you can't use the space very easily. So someone's like me who's very short, I can't reach the stuff that's on the top shelf. And so it's not very functional. So some sort of design that makes the top shelves more functional, something that pulls down, that sort of thing. The third thing is having to do with ingredients. And so when you're in the grocery store, um, it there isn't like an app or some sort of easy way to determine if the food item is um, something that doesn't have an allergen or doesn't contain red dyes or other things that might be harmful or someone on a specific diet is looking for. So if you're looking to buy something that doesn't have red dye, preservatives, uh, high fructose corn syrup, that sort of thing, that you have to look at all of the label on everything. And there might be some way to scan with an app or something to determine, you know, my child is allergic to this, or I have a family member that can't have nuts, or whatever it is. And so something that would be like some sort of app that would be able to identify the safety or the ingredients and the feasibility of those for the family.
Got it. And two, like just trying to back to like reaching for the pots and pans, I'm sure there's some data out there that people they just falling off ladders or falling off stools. A lot of times you bring a stool, but still you're doing that twisting and turning and body strains and sprains. So you definitely have that medical aspect and the data to back that. You may not find exact data that says, oh, how many people fall off stools in their kitchen for reaching for objects such as pots and pans. You may not find a lot of data. However, you can probably find data if you just kind of take it down a notch and just say ladder falls, stool falls. It doesn't matter if they're in the kitchen, in the garage, out in the backyard, you're going to find data to help back that. Um, but I think any of those ideas, Scott, I mean, any issues with any of those that you see?
No, although I'd have to say that if this was my class, I would probably nix number 3, only because I don't have computer science kids here, but I'm always looking for something that is a physical product to make, but I won't say that here.
Yeah, I think that the feasibility of us being able to design and build that is low, but I thought that we could find a lot of research on the topic.
Oh, absolutely, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, I'm just monitoring the chat. Yeah, with the computer science, my students in engineering, all of a sudden their solution is computer science related. So part of this class is making connections, finding resources. So even though my students may not know the programming, they know where to go in the building. They know where to go out and find these external class resources that would help them with some of that code. So that's the beauty about this capstone class is that you're not going to know everything. Your students are not going to know everything, but that's where finding outside available resources is going to come into play. All
Yep,
right.
thank you.
Yep. Thank you all. By the way, these logos are really fun and the team names are great. But we have the fitness team, fitness engineering. Love the logo over there. Would you all mind sharing your 3 top problems?
Hey, so we try to keep it as general, just focusing on the the problems themselves. So here you see we have how can a diet meet fitness goals? How can motivation be maintained to adhere to our workout plans? And how can we ensure that time is regularly allotted for fitness goals? Um, I think we kind of took the approach. We put all our problems together and we looked at what the common themes were within those problems, and we um listed them out that way. I'm not sure if we were actually leaning towards one over the other just yet, though.
Yep. And just looking at these, I can definitely see where some type of computer science or app could come into play. Since it's dealing with the human body, fitness, muscles, metabolism, calorie intake, protein, all your net carbs, that's where biomedical comes into play. If it's physical devices, that's where the engineering is going to come in. So this here would be a great project to do if you have a hybrid biomedical computer science engineering team working together. But I think any of those would work. I just think that last one, that could be tough because that could be open-ended. But if you refine that last one a little more with, the type of fitness goal or what the activity is, you can definitely do that. But Scott, anything you see? Any problems within a 2-week class to work through?
No, if they're not, if we're not looking to actually build anything, then no. In my classroom, I'd have to ask the really hard question of, okay, what are you going to build? What's the physical product when you're done? And just me, I'm having a hard time seeing a physical product out of that, but that doesn't mean there isn't one there. I'm just saying I'm not seeing it. So, but I don't see a problem for the next 2 weeks, no.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank you.
Crop Guardians.
Right, I can go for our group. So our first one came out of talking about grass dying from like the sun and the heat, but not having a sprinkler system in place. So you either have to like run a bunch of hoses or set up your sprinklers and just try to keep your grass and plants from dying. Second one is animals eating fruits and vegetables. So you could have like birds picking at your blueberry bushes, rabbits, getting into the garden. We know like fences already exist, but they don't always work for all animals. And then the third one is not knowing how much or when to water your plants, based on the different type of plants you have in your garden or just like flowering plants in your yard. We were talking because two of my group mates are in Texas. I'm in New York, so like different soil needs and all that stuff. So how do you know when to like water all your plants?
Yes, lots of and by the way, all three of those topics could definitely have a physical prototype as part of your solution. And we're dealing with animals, we're dealing with plants, so there's a whole thing with science involved there. And even though the prototypes could be physical, there's definitely could be some computer science programming for monitoring each of these three problems inside there. Is there a particular topic that everyone was more passionate about over the others?
I don't think so. I'd have to talk with the two of them. I know we were definitely frustrated by the animals, so I could see that being a good one. But then we did talk about like watering and how that also kills our plants. So
True.
probably like two or three. One of the group mates is computer science focused, so I know he was kind of thinking three. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you got lots of opportunities there.
Yeah, good job. I think any one of those will be fun, doable in 2 weeks, and you'll be able to go through each of the steps of the capstone design process. The landscapers. 3 big ideas. Lauren, Jeff, and James. Feel free to share.
Okay, I can share. So our ideas were weed pulling and maintenance is very difficult and requires constant rework, not getting the entire root, weeds just constantly coming back up after pulling. Steep hills or berms are difficult to mow safely or effectively, if they're super steep or get up there with a mower. Plant labels break or wear out before the end of the season. Sometimes they're all faded and torn and just don't seem to last all the way to the end. So those were kind of our focus points.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some good topics there.
Yep, lots of opportunities for things there in the
Plant
next
label.
weeks.
Yep. Is there a particular one that you kind of gearing more towards?
I'd have to talk to the other guys. I think the steep hills are difficult to mow safely or possibly the weed pulling maintenance
Hmm.
would be our focus. I don't know. We don't know for sure yet.
Great.
Jeff couldn't talk yesterday. I don't know if he's better today, but I think he had said he was leaning toward the steep hills, difficult to mow, Like Lauren said, either steep hills or the weed pulling would probably be my choices.
Yep. Very good. Doable. Good, fun
Good.
2-week project.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right. Moving along here. Is that it, everyone? Did we do everyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I guess we did. Awesome.
Cool.
So as you can see, we did the same thing with our students. They're going to come up and, sometimes they may call me the dream smasher. And I'll say, well, that's a good topic, but I just think we're going to have a hard time finding the resources. Or they just have a solution in mind that they just keep talking and talking about it. And I'll say, hey, listen, I know this is a great topic, but let's just trust the process. Let's learn how to do this process for this 9-month long class. And then on your own, if you really want to do this one project, we'll get a new journal and then we'll go through each step of the design process that we're going to learn. But bottom line is we want to do a project that they're going to find research on, something that they're going to be able to build, something that they're going to be able to test, and something that's not going to limit them by geographic constraints on there. So if you kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because you're teachers, you're professionals, you have all different backgrounds, life skills. You can come up with solutions so quick just by reading problem statements. That's why this course is a little tough for everyone here who's seasoned adults, life skills. But for students, they're going to just try thinking solutions right off the bat. But hey, that's part of the fun here is going through this process. Does anyone have any questions on what we just did or any suggestions on how you may do this within your own classroom? Hey, Amanda.
Hey, so one thing that I kind of noticed y'all as facilitators, so like the thing about the sharks and the sunscreen, like there's absolutely UV resistant bacteria and UV susceptible bacteria. So like for your biomed students, how do you not pigeonhole them into only a solution that involves like your area of expertise? Because you might have students that have other experiences than you do.
Right. What I do when they're coming up with these different topics and problems, I have them do some basic surface research. So they're going to do some surface research on some of their ideas that they came up with, so that when I'll say, hey, there's no way you can work on the sunscreen problem, but they're like, well, Mr. Butler, according to some research we found, there's actually some there's some repellents out there that we can use, and there's some type of, sunscreens out there that we can use that could possibly be part of our project. So if they are really like dead set, I'm like, hey, let's do a little bit of research on this. If we can see the green light on it, because I don't know everything. I'm not biomedical, I'm not computer science, but my students, they're researching all the time, and we do basic surface research, and that's what they're bringing when they're trying to present their top 3 to 5 ideas. Scott?
Yeah, it's the kind of questions that we were asking before, and of course, I don't have computer science here, and the health science kids have not come here yet, so I haven't run into that yet. So I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. I haven't run into it yet, so I'll probably have to figure it out when I do, if I do.
I mean, do you ever like find yourself needing to reach out to like other teachers for their input on kids' projects?
Yes, I've done that before, where they've actually reached out to the science department. We were one of the topics was dealing with restrooms and how restrooms are always messy, and it came down to ultimately it was urinals in men's bathrooms. And sorry, ladies, for having to talk about this, but I'm like, hey, I really want to work on this project, but they're like, well, there's a lot of science behind this, and we're talking to some of the biology teachers who are talking about like the human body system, and there's a lot of validation behind that. There's a lot of validation of, people that They don't have easily accessible bathrooms, so they hold it in all day, and then that causes some issues with the human body. So they had all that as part of their justification. So my students, they're always going out. They're talking to other teachers. They're reaching out to professors at the local community college, at the four-year schools. Um, it's not just me because I don't know everything. And that's where when we start getting to element A is actually finding the justification. They're going to be going out talking to all these outside stakeholders. A lot of them are not even people within the own building. They're people that are out there, professionals, engineers, people in the scientific community. So that's where when we get into element A, you're going to start to identify who these stakeholders are. We're going to start talking about different associations revolving around these student projects. But I make them before they go out and they share their top three ideas, three problems with me. I just make sure they're doing a little bit of surface research as they're going through this process. Does
Yeah,
that help a
and
little bit?
yeah, and since I have my jury of professionals in 4 times in the year, uh, they're asking a lot of real pointed questions about the projects that the kids are starting to propose right at the end of the first quarter. So they're getting a lot of feedback from really experienced people. So if one of my guys is a Air Force Academy grad, and he taught aerodynamics at West Point, and he's been a pilot for ever. So he's, really well put together, smart guy. I got another guy who was in radars and stuff at Lockheed Martin, who's now retired. So tons of experience there with very practical stuff. So that helps a lot that they're not just hearing it from me. They're hearing it from, and not from other teachers even, and they're hearing from people out in the real world, quote unquote, and stuff. So I find that to be very useful.
I have another question I just saw pop up there. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Yes, I had a quick question about timing. Scott, you just mentioned about by the end of the first quarter, they would introduce these 3 topics or these 3 problem statements to you guys. I just want to know the timeline more or less. When do they start getting together and creating these questions, these presentations, and what is your process like? Do you have them go up in front of the class? So just basically the timeline and how do you have this in the class? How do you orchestrate it?
Yeah.
So for me, what I do is, the first week of school, what is capstone? What exactly are we doing? Second week, we're starting to review the engineering or the capstone design process. We're starting to identify problems in our journal. We're getting the journal set up. So I would say, and again, I'm doing this every single day, 40 minutes. So I'm at the halfway, 15 days of school. So if I'm starting in September, probably by that second to third week in September, we're already starting to brainstorm problems. We reviewed what the capstone design process is. We saw the shopping cart IDEO video. So the students know exactly what they're going to be doing for the 9 months within my class. It takes us 4 days, 3 or 4 days to get in teams to share each other's top loves, then to come up with more themed problems. When they come up with those themed problems, that's when they're starting to do some surface research to see if they're going to find research on it, if it's going to be a good topic to take through the rest of the design process. So right now, we're almost third to fourth week in the school, almost at the 1 month mark with our students.
Yeah, and because of the way my school is running, what they can do as far as changing classes and everything right at the beginning of the year. I run through a series of fundamental lectures through the first 8 or 9 days of the year, and then we start getting into things. So, and we're on 9-week quarters. So yeah, I'm probably about the same place as Jeff, that we're probably at the 4 or 5 week point in the year when they're starting to get towards writing up their problem statement or making a team. Sorry, I should say that, getting their teams together.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. Before we take a quick break, when we come back, Scott's going to talk a little bit. There's a PowerPoint presentation all about justifying your problem academically, ethically. There's a lot of slides in the PowerPoint. We're not going to go through everything inside the PowerPoint, but we're going to talk about a couple key points as far as getting students to research some important aspects and people to get involved with this step and why it's important to have the academic justification of your resource. We're going to talk about a activity that you'll all be doing so that at the end of this morning, when we get you out in teams and for your own time, you'll be able to go out and actually start looking at some of the research and look at some of the articles on there. All right. With that said, Scott, let's do a quick 10-minute break. We'll come back at 12 after. I'll pause. Scott, do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah.
I'm looking at that.
Yeah, hang on. I'm emailing Solution Center about this timeout thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Send. All right. So slideshow. Share.
So Jeff, real fast. I'm just trying to navigate. I want to make sure I understand. Like, remember you were like, don't show up. You said this in day 0. Don't show up with like an idea of like the problem in your head already.
The solution, right?
The solution. Yeah. So I'm just trying to navigate like, I guess the process will yield problems, right? Like that early, like things that annoy you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's weird because it's like, we tell our students don't think solutions, but as a teacher, I'm trying to think of what would be part of their solution. If students like, oh, well, there's got to be a better guardrail out there because these guardrails are getting destroyed and, cars that are going 85 miles an hour, they hit these guardrails. And I was like, okay, but I'm thinking the solution is when they build something and test it, how are they going to have this device or whose car are they going to borrow to drive 85 miles an hour and slam into a guardrail? So that's kind of, even though I don't know what the solution is, but I know what the problem entails and how that could be an issue when it comes time to building a prototype and doing the testing. So I guess the reason why I deny a lot of my students topics is just because of the prototypes and because if they don't have a prototype, it's going to be hard for them to test it.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. And to the question about the PowerPoints we're showing you and everything like that, as master teachers, we're trying to give you a whole boatload of tools to do because we don't know what your environment is, what students you have. We're giving you our experience. But in the end, what I'm going to recommend is that the first year you do this, do it through E3, do it the curriculum the way it is, and take copious notes. What worked, what didn't work, I've been doing these for a dozen years, and so I know things. In some of the classes, I reorder things, and I tweak assignments because of my background in the defense business and things like that. So, and one of the frustrations I have with the E3 system and the old one too, is that the students get to see the entire curriculum all at once. And I've got students who will take the third or fourth weekend of the year and they'll run the entire curriculum because that's the kids that I have. And it gets frustrating because then they don't have anything to do. And then they're, cutting up with their friends instead of the friends doing the work, things like that. So, but like I said, we'll give you lots of tools. We'll give you all this stuff that will be in the Google Drive and everything like that you can draw from. But first year, run it like they've got it. So, all right. So let's talk about justifying a problem academically or ethically. So, these are the things that we want to get to. Is the problem that you have identified really worth solving? And so standard questions or pathways, or is it there a large volume of evidence supporting it? All right, so you're going to have to go out and find out, is there evidence? Would solving this really help people? And can I prove that there would be a market for the product that solves the problem? Because in the end, I kind of joke around with people that physics is the practical application of mathematics to how the universe works, and engineering is the practical application of physics to making money, or solving problems, to be less crass about it. But so in the end, this is what we're doing in computer science or biosciences or engineering. We're trying to, is there a product that we can go out there and help people with? So two ways that we can justify things, either academically or ethically, or market research. Both valid, both important, but different problems will demand different ways of doing these. Many problems you could do either or both, but some of them are only going to be that you can do by market research. Other ones you can do very thoroughly just by doing the academic. So that's part of as a teacher, you're looking at it as, are they going to be able to find articles? Because surveys for high school students are difficult, mainly because you have to get if you're going to do it right, you've got to have a certain number of people for the sample and to get valid results. And then we don't have access to email lists like commercial or places like the political survey people and stuff like that have. We don't have access to stuff like that. So, all right, so we can either do it through academic research, or this should be where we start. We should start with the academic research, and you can see how this is how I do it with the poster paper, the sticky note paper. I don't do the thing with the pages attached to it, but this is where they come up with their three loves and three problems within each one of the three loves, and then they start. The way they did this here was that they had them start stapling the research papers to support things onto it. I find it makes them too heavy and they fall down. But so like I said, some problems are worth solving but have no research. So then you have to start doing your market research. So we're going to start out with the individuals looking into their areas of interest. So this is what are my three loves. And then under each one of the three loves, individually, they're going to come up with their large problems within the area of interest. This is where they're going to start doing the teaming up and getting things down to more of a manageable problems within the area of interest. Then as the team, they're going to start doing their preliminary research. And then in the end, they will, as a team, they will justify their problem. And we end with this concise problem statement, which we will get to in another set of PowerPoints that Jeff will do a little bit later. But in the end, they become the expert, and they have to be the expert, because the jury of professionals should be asking them very pointed questions, and they better be able to answer them. Okay, so where are we on the flow chart? Where we're kind of in this place right here, where we're looking at it, and we're doing these decision boxes. Can we justify it ethically, academically? The answer is yes, then we can go on to there. If no, then we have to go to market research. Yes, we can go on. No, well, then we have to, rethink about it. We may have to go circle back and do some new brainstorming. So who says that your problem is a problem? You need to have a lot of varied sources and different arguments for the problem. I think you can't have this, that you, like I said the other day, if you know the old TV show Dragnet, Sergeant Friday was always famous for saying the line that he never did say, "Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts." I tell them that they got to think a lot like a lawyer would think. Remove the language of affection, use the language of the report. So concise, direct, to the point, backed up with data. And if you go into it assuming that nobody was going to believe you, you're going to be able to put together really good facts to back up every point that you need. Excuse me.
Scott, Cheryl has a question, it looks like.
Yeah. Cheryl.
Thank you. So I have a question about the three loves. Do you do the
We're not hearing you, Cheryl.
Cheryl, yeah, maybe the
You
mic's.
unmuted, but we're not. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, my microphone was up on the air.
Yeah.
So as far as the three loves, does that eventually be their main project for the year, or is this just a practice project?
No, this is how they get down. What you guys just did the other day, right? Or what you did yesterday, where you came up with, here are 3 areas and here are some problems within those areas. Those 3 big ones, those are what I call the 3 loves. Remember, we said the other day that you can do it by, what are you passionate about? Don't you hate it when? Or, those 3 things. I always try to focus on what are my 3 loves, because I know that as seniors, senioritis is an issue. And so I have to have them picking something that is going to motivate them through the end of the year. And so that's why I focus on that one.
Yeah,
All right,
but that
sounds
will
good.
become their those 3 ideas when they start doing the research. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 2, I'm finding a lot of research on. I think that's it. That's going to be the one we're going to take through the rest of this capstone design process.
And at what point in the school year do you do this? Do you do any kind of preliminary, like looking at problems and investigating the ethical, moral, or justifying, like something that is more prescribed, or is it just focused on their idea?
Yeah, we do little exercises at the beginning. We're looking at current problems. I know, with that, and it's the same things in that E3 system as the A3 problem identification. You're looking at the sip and drip, the fertigator. We're looking at past solutions out there, and we're trying to identify what the problems are. But I would say we're brainstorming. There's videos out there on Modern Marvels where like engineering disasters gone wrong or products with failed inventions go wrong, and you can kind of start those ethics discussions early with them. But I would say now is a good month into the school year that they're starting to define and they're starting to research their topics and their problems.
Right. Yeah. That was the 4 or 5 weeks in kind of a thing where they're starting to form their teams. They've already done the My 3 Loves. They've kind of come up with the problems. They start talking to each other about it and where they mesh together and they can start coming up with a team of 3 or 4. One of the things that I do somewhere around in here is there was an article in the New York Times a number of years ago about these really crazy products that were available, like tiny little umbrellas that fit over the toes of women's high-heeled shoes to keep the shoes dry, and or air-conditioned shoes and all sorts of crazy things like this. And I hand that to them, and I say, okay, what was the problem they were trying to solve? We've already talked about how to write a problem statement. Write a problem statement for this product. And it gets them into the idea that, you can have this idea for a product, but what was the problem it was trying to solve, right? There's a lot of products out there that are solutions in search of a problem. And we need to get them to understand and do it the other way around. Okay. And as far as, doing the others, they do include that one mini design project in the curriculum with the turbidity sensors. I've never done it. Jeff said, what did you do it once? And you found it took almost a month to do it. And it was a month you can't afford and stuff. Almost all of the students I get in this class, I've already had them for at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 years already. So this is my 4th year with them. They're also, in science fair and things. They already have a pretty good idea of how to do good research and everything like that. So I don't have to worry about that too much. Of course, you've got a different population of students than mine, maybe. So you might have to be talking more about that. Have the librarian invite them down and show them how to do research and stuff. I don't know. So, okay. So as we're doing, so we need to capture a couple of things. What was said, what was the, and who said it. And We talked about citations yesterday, and Jeff said, you know, you may have a campus thing about MLA or whatever. I've always heard that APA is the format for scientific and engineering publications, as opposed to MLA would be more like history and things like that. And I make them do the APA because I tell them, you got to be able to go back and forth. You need to understand them. And as I told Jeff yesterday, it drives me crazy as an engineer. If you look at all of them, APA, MLA, Chicago, and all the other ones that are out there, there's not a whole lot of difference between them. They're like very minor variations on a theme. And I said, could we not get together and have one standard? But that's just me. Okay. Where should you look to find your best justification? So here's some, to an extent, this is a little bit dated because it's not like there's physical periodicals and academic journals anymore. It's, you know, electronic databases. You know, who's got microfiche anymore? You know, I don't think our library has any microfiche anymore. And books, again, yeah, there's some. I got a grant for $1,500 a couple of years ago. I've got some engineering books in a library here, but it's not what it would be for this kind of a thing. So most of these first two, you know, the periodicals, academic journals, books and related articles and stuff like that, this is all stuff they're going to be finding online now to an extent, or they might go down to a university library if they have access to that. They might start interviewing people who are experts on things. And then we get into the idea of surveys, which is an entire different subject here. Newspapers, multimedia, commercial internet sites, these are all sorts of different places to go. And so there's 5 different ways that you can kind of justify a problem. So is it an economic issue? Is it a technical problem? Is it an educational thing? Is it a legal issue? Is it health and safety? And, you know, sometimes health, safety, you know, the 4 on either side, it's kind of hard to pick which one is which. You know, which one is it? Is it a technical problem that people are suing for? Is it a safety problem? So there's that sort of a thing. But, and so it's, you know, in the PowerPoint template that they have, that one of the slides early on is their attack path. And so this is where that comes from. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. And I've always required that they have to have at least 3 of these paths, you know, health and safety, economics, technical, or legal, educational, technical, something like that. 3 is a bare minimum, 4 is great, 5 is golden, you know, if they can come at it from all 5 directions. But it's like people are hurt or killed by, people are suing because, that sort of a thing. And so they've got backup for each of those statements, which they've done in their research. Okay, so they talk about quality and quantity of resources. You want to go across a whole lot of different sources to make a better justification. You have to have sound, multiple, and documented sources. 5 sources are usually good. Now, so that's really, if you're going to do this, you're going to have 3 different paths as a minimum, and you're going to have 5 sources for each one of those if you can get them to do it. 4 great sources will do, providing 4 different attack paths. I think they need to have more than 1 per attack path. All right, so you'll know what research tools you have available. Like I said, we have access to an EBSCO database library. It's focused for high school students, which means it's not necessarily the strongest for the kind of stuff that we're doing here, because we're working at kind of a more of adult level already for the kids, almost a university level in some cases. So you got Google Scholar, databases such as Academic Search Premier, ERIC, Statistical Abstract of the United States. This is one of the things I point out to them, is that the United States federal government collects a monumental amount of data on a daily basis. And because they do it on the taxpayer's dime, it's available to everybody for free. All you have to do is start going out to the departments that might be collecting it, whether that's the NTSB or National Traffic Safety, Highway Administration, or the FDA, or whatever. There's data out there already. And then what comes from the Census Bureau, all that kind of stuff. So that's all that. Let's see, how do I get out of this?
Scott, I just want to show
Oh,
them a
there.
couple things too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you want to show them this?
Oh
The
yeah,
link
that's in a couple minutes. I'm going to show them
Yeah.
that.
All
But
right.
this
Okay.
is where it, make two lists during this 2-week training. Make a list of some I wish I had. This is for your little supplies, like buying some sticker paper. There'll be some little tools and edit things that are not in the My PLTW store, but also too a list of who to make friends with. And one of the people you want to make friends with, if your school still has one, is the school librarian. I know they rebranded them, they call them the school media specialist. But if you're still fortunate to have one of those librarian school media specialists, part of making them feel important because they are important people. They are very helpful. I get them involved with my capstone class and they know about capstone. I talk to them in the summertime. They start to learn what my student problems and topics are. They come into my class. We go down to the library, as Scott says, even though that there's no books left on the shelf, but at least it's a different location. It gets my students up and moving. And the librarian actually kind of does like a quick overview of how to search using databases, the Boolean operators. They're going to go over also search terms, how to use and or not. But most importantly, as Scott was mentioning, these online databases, these journal resources, scholarly articles that schools pay big bucks to subscribe to. Now, if your district doesn't have access to those online databases, maybe your local town public library, if you have one, maybe because your students live within the town, maybe they'll have access to that school library. But back to edutainment and stickers, I make a sticker of all the usernames and passwords for those online databases. So if my students are working at home, they can access those databases. They have all the usernames and passwords inside their engineering notebook. So again, if you don't have a librarian, maybe there's some type of outside resource. I know a lot of times these community colleges, these local universities also have some type of partnership with some schools, but I'm just trying to get someone else involved with my students, getting them to write a new contact down inside their engineering journal because they could be a valuable resource for our students. But the reason why we do all of this research, and again, I'm not going to go through this whole 20-page PowerPoint with you, but you're starting off with a very basic problem. You know, lots of people go fishing for redfish and they don't catch anything. There aren't as many redfish as there used to be. All right, that was the team's first problem. That was their very basic statement that they came to class with. Now, as they start doing some research, they're going to identify the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how many. They're going to try to answer as many of those questions there by doing some academic research. Again, they may not find all of the who, what, where, when, why, and how, but they're slowly are going to become an expert with inside their field as they start researching, as they start looking at different associations, because I know nothing about fishing. I've never fished in my life. I really have been, but I don't know anything. I'm the teacher. You're not going to know a lot about your students' projects, nor do you have to. It's them by doing the research. And this is one of the things, and Scott, I bet you agree too, when students come in and they start teaching you things off of things that they've learned within their topic. Amazing thing that starts to happen when they do this research. But it's also one of those long and grueling things. When you start saying that R word, that research, students want to jump straight to Google, which is fine just to kind of figure out what some of the key terms are. One of the things I make my students do is come up with 25 key terms associated with their topic. So if I'm doing something on grilling, maybe my 25 key terms has to do with grill parts like regulators, igniters, cooking pan, flash points, propane, coal, charcoal, whatever the types of key terms out there associated with my topic is. So this way, when I start doing the research, I have some key terms that are associated with my topic and my problem. But the whole point of doing this research is to help us figure out the who, what, where, when, why, and how. So if you look at this problem statement, and you'll see this in E3, we even put a PowerPoint inside there. Again, it's all the legacy stuff is there in E3. They just kind of skimmed it out a little bit and made it so you can't edit it. But you'll see that students, and this could take close to a month between the research, which is only one part of the justification. When we come back from our 3-hour lunch break, we'll start talking about surveys, but we're trying to define what our problem is. So do they do this as a team? Both yes and no. So the first thing that they do, and by the way, here is their game fisherman. Where is this happening? Where is their data coming from? Well, they found some studies from 2002 to 2007. Exactly like how many are impacted by this. Will this decrease by 20%? Well, what exactly is causing this decrease? Well, according to their data, it talks about premature death due to mouth infections when they catch and release undersized fish. So now I have more data that's kind of getting refined and worked into my problem statement. So our problem statements, they start very vague and they start to become refined. We wordsmith them. Sometimes we have 3 or 4 revisions to our problem statement as we go through these next couple steps. So again, like we said, and this is another sticker my students put inside their engineering journal. We want to look at all different types of justification here. Our topics or anything health and safety related, any legal issues, any educational programs out there. Is there anything technical, anything economic? We want to look at all these different attack paths out there, but this is what our students do. And this is what we're going to be doing during our 3-hour break. So we're going to give you some time here in just a couple seconds to kind of chat with your team. But my students, they have to come up with 5 research articles. So every student comes up with 5 of these article critiques. And basically what they're doing, they may look at 10, 15, 20 different articles. They're going to be doing this for weeks. But out of all those different articles, what articles are worth them critiquing? What articles are going to help them paint a better story of the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how? So there's this research summary sheet that I hand out to them first. However, I make them outline this in their journal first. So they're going to write the article source. If you're an MLA or APA school and you want them to use that as their source reference, by all means, that's great practice. Again, it's all about raising the bar for our students. But they're going to summarize that article. Now, a summary, and I tell them, if you're reading an article that's 7 pages long, and if you're going to come up with a 1-sentence article summary, summarizing that article, that's not really high school level work. I at least make my students do, 5 to 7 sentences summarizing that article. The critique now is, how does that tie into my problem? The artifact critique is, how does that tie into other research that I've been doing? So that's what my students do, and that little critique part may be 3 to 4 sentences. So each student does 5 of these. So if they're working in a team of 3, they're going to have 15 of these research article summaries that they're going to be saving in their Element A folder. And these are grades. So back to getting grades, if Johnny Smith has to do 5 of these, he's going to get graded on his 5. If he's working with Samantha Jones is going to have 5. And if Tommy Pastrami is supposed to have 5 and he only did 2, well, you know what? He's going to get zeros on the 3 of the articles that he's missing because he only did 2 out of his 5 articles. So these are graded deliverables that my students do first. But again, because I want them from their brain in their journal, they're just going to outline this in their journal first. Then after, they're going to type it up on the research article sheet. And a copy of those sheets we did put, in case you can't find it in E3 system, we put those inside the day 3 folder. So there is a Project Lead the Way capstone summary sheet inside here. So again, I print this out, I give it to the students so they have a physical copy in front of them. They outline it in their journal first, and then in Google Classroom, they download 5 of these, and they fill one out for each of their 5 articles. And they're saving this in their Team Element A folder. Butler Article 1, Butler Article 2, Butler Article 3, McClanahan Article 1, McClanahan Article 2, McClanahan Article 3. So our students are starting to understand more about their problem. This afternoon, we're going to start talking about the other form of justification, which is using surveys. We're going to talk about finding associations out there. The associations are different organizations that relate to our students' topics. They're overarching themes out there, because those could be great resources that our students reach out to have them get some further justification, have them have surveys completed, for them to reach out and find different experts. So with this Element A, we're just going out there. We're just trying to not only identify the problem, but now we're trying to validate it. We're trying to define our problem and eventually come up with a well-defined problem statement. Now, Scott, in your class, when you do those research article sheets there, any tips or tricks they have to keep in mind? I know with your school, they're using the format there that they use in science and engineering. But is there anything else, any other tips or tricks we can share with our participants?
Yeah, can I have the screen for a second?
Sure.
This is a thing I found a number of years ago when I was teaching AP Computer Science principles. And I like to show it. This is last year's version of it. I understand I just saw there's a version 13. This is version 12. But it's a very interesting, and I always find it fascinating that it's pretty much a bell curve. So across the bottom is bias. So whether it's left, leaning or right leaning, and I like the fact that they put the left to the left and the right to the right. And then the y-axis is how reliable it is. And so up here at the top, it's thorough fact reporting or first fact dense analysis, all the way down to contains inaccurate or fabricated, contains misleading and stuff like that. And so these are all of the kinds of news sources that are out there these days and stuff like that. And so it's a way of pointing out to them is be careful of what you're looking at. If you're getting something from what's one of them down here, like Counterpunch or something like that over there, or Bill O'Reilly over here, or whatever, you got to, really question things. But if you're up here in these kinds of things, then you probably have, some good solid footing on what you're doing. And so it becomes a broader conversation for a moment about, where you're getting your information from, and, are you being manipulated and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's an interesting thing out there. And I've got the link, I'll put it up there, but you have to fill out stuff to get it or whatever. And so, but it's there.
Edutainment, this is a sticker my students put in the journal. So they're working with the librarian, and it just says, hey, there's different types of believability. There's worst, there's best. And I started off class because now it's October, it's fall time. And I tell them, they walk in class and I have this devastated look on my face. They're like, Mr. Butler, what's wrong? Mr. Butler, what's going on? I'm like, I was reading the websites and I saw in the news that Hershey's, they're discontinuing the peanut butter cups. No way, get out. And I show them the news clip on there. Like, oh my gosh, the machines are old and it says the peanut butter cups are not popular. So all of a sudden they're like, Butler, this is fake news. I'm like, no, it's not. It's online. They're like, no, Mr. Butler, that's not real. That someone just posted this as a fake article. No, but it's online. It means it's real. But I use that as a way to segue my presentation on what is believable, what is not believable. Yes, we want them to find books, articles, periodicals, but they're not going to find that sometimes. So yeah, sometimes they do have to start off at those commercial websites, but they get the point. And then I'm like, just gotcha. But I was like, you can see where people believe things that don't have the academic backing behind it. Then I pass them out Reese's peanut butter cups. please make sure no one's allergic to peanuts if you do that. You can't take chances these days. But again, it's just what I do in my classrooms to really try to break up this research stuff because it can get boring. So I like taking them to the library, getting the librarian involved inside there. But for everybody here, I know we have a 3-hour break coming up. We will have breakout rooms open, but I guess the first thing you all want to do is figure out what problem do you want to work on out of your 3? And we saw some good ones. Thank you all for sharing. Very, very nice job. But out of those 3 topics, those 3 problems, which one do you want to take through the rest of the capstone design process? And then what we're going to have you all do is actually do at least find 2 articles pertaining to that problem. And you're going to outline those articles inside your journal, and you're going to type up your little critique sheet. So that's kind of part of your on your own time between now and when we come back this afternoon. So again, we'll have the breakout rooms open. Do what you have to do. But I would say between now and when we meet back this afternoon at 4 o'clock East Coast time, identify which one of those problems you want to do and just start doing some research. Find at least 2 articles that you could critique. If you want to actually do the critique prior, great, you'll be ahead of the game. But when we come back this afternoon, we're going to be talking about surveys and different types of surveys, associations, and we will definitely have some work time within our teams this afternoon. Scott, anything else before I'm going to go ahead and just stop